Back at it again. The Football Playbook with your boy RIC and the place to be, Ric Serritella, telling it like it is. When it comes to the Damar Hamlin situation, the 13-3 Philadelphia Eagles, the football universe. And hey, big shout out to all of our listeners, all of our chat room people. Appreciate all the newbies, the first time, the long time, everybody in between. By the way, weekdays, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to noon Eastern, right here, 2 hours of power, TFP with RIC from the Jersey Shore. Get down on it. Great to see a lot of you out at the football tailgate. We got a little bit of that conversation in on yesterday's show. Great to see Go Sixers, the Doc, Dawn. Some of you guys were missing in action. We'll do it again. I promise you that. But we're staying on top of the Damar Hamlin situation. For those of you who didn't see, Bart Scott was blaming T. Higgins for lowering his head into the chest of Damar Hamlin after he caught the ball. T. Higgins made a football move, put his head down, tried to pick up extra yardage. I guess his helmet is what impacted Hamlin's chest, and Bart Scott was kind of putting the blame on T. Higgins. Come on, man. All right. Let's welcome on Glenn Erby. It is Wednesday, and that means it's Erby time. Good morning, Eagles Newswire USA Today, always with us 10:30 every Wednesday on the Football Playbook. Glenn, appreciate you taking the time. Obviously, we are dealing with a situation and a story that goes much further beyond the game of football, the gridiron, and everything else. What was your takeaway? Were you watching it live? What was your reaction? And I hear the Eagles are going to get back to business today. Let us know what you hear.
Rick, good morning. Yeah, they are getting back to business. I saw it live. It impacted me. I think I took the day off. I didn't really work too much yesterday. So I think from that standpoint, I think we all play football. We understand when we play football what we sign up for. So I think from that standpoint, the whole gladiator thing, you understand. But seeing how it happened and the way it happened, it was a bit uncomfortable. But to see he's, getting better and things of that nature, it makes everything feel like it's getting a little bit back to normal. But it was unsettling for sure.
Yeah, and we will continue to update the situation, try to work through the situation. It is very disturbing and tolling and taxing. And now the NFL has a big business decision to make, right? There's a lot of network TV money at stakes. There's a lot of stakes at stakes, as the Ocean Casino might say. But this game, the Bills and the Bengals, that is, I mean, this might be the biggest stakes of any regular season game played, unless the Bills come out and say, we're good, we don't want to play. I think the NFL has to find a way to play this game, don't they?
I mean, I think from a business standpoint, all the money the networks spend. Yeah, I think from a compassion standpoint, empathy, just trying to, do things the correct way. I'm not sure a coin flip or seeing how Sunday's outcomes impact, the number one seed and things of that nature. I think you can just, you can allow it to be a tie or to be an unfinished game and go from there. So I'm not sure, they have billions in the bank. If they have to pay a network some money, I'm sure they can do that. But I don't see the reason to, when you have a team. One team is set to have a number one seed. One team could be playing in the wild card. So in between, you're going to play 3 games with all this emotion flurrying in about a 10-day span. I'm not sure that's fair for the Bengals.
Ooh, it's going to be unbelievable. Believe it or not, we're 39 days away from the Super Bowl.
Correct.
And so they got to sort this thing out in a very relatively quick amount of time. We'll continue to see what happens. Now, the Eagles took the day off yesterday. Each team choosing to handle it differently. I saw Mike Tomlin, who actually knew Damar Hamlin going back to the age of 12 because Hamlin grew up in PA. He was a big-time Pittsburgh high school football player. And so Tomlin did meet with the media. He was distraught. You could tell there. We will see the reaction from Coach Sirianni. And I think the assistants, Sirianni's scheduled for 12:30 today.
Correct.
The assistants, I believe, will also speak because they did not speak yesterday. And I've got a bone to pick with the assistants if I was down there today, Glenn. I mean, first off, to me, Miles Sanders, who was also very distraught from the Damar Hamlin situation, but prior to that, he played a season low, 22 snaps, just 40% of the snap count on offense. I saw his post-game comments where he said the knee was fine, didn't bother him. I'm starting to believe that there's something more than meets the eye here. I firmly believe Miles Sanders has lost the confidence of the coaching staff. I do believe he's in the doghouse. And Miles Sanders got 22 snaps. Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell got 33 snaps combined. What's going on? Make it make sense, Glenn Erby.
I mean, we've had this conversation before. I'm not sure when you have a team in the middle of a Super Bowl, of trying to make a Super Bowl run. I'm not sure we can, it would be fair to say, well, this is business, but it's a situation where he is a 1,000-yard rusher. He's a guy looking for a new contract, but you have a situation where, as long as I think they truthfully feel, as long as that offensive line is stout, as long as it's the top offensive line in the game, you really can put anyone back there. So, Kenneth Gainwell may not be Miles Sanders, but they're comfortable on third downs in passing situations, red zone situations. Gainwell's in the game. So that's something, that can be concerning. His 2 fumbles over the past few weeks, that can be concerning as well. But there's something there. They're doing a good job of not allowing it to bubble over. But you are correct. I think the past few weeks I tried to talk you down from that, but seeing how he said his knee was fine despite the brace, there could be something there.
Yeah, and I see Adams Exploit said, hey, Coach Sirianni said they were concerned about the knee, but that's part of the problem, Adam, is because when you've got the coach telling me something different than what the player is telling the media, there's a disconnect there. And that's concerning for me because Miles is telling you, like, yo, he even said to one of the reporters, like, how'd it look to you? Right? So you could tell there's an underlining tone there. Like, Miles Sanders is playing it well, too, because he's irked underneath and he's not letting it become a big public display. There's something going on. Now, let's talk about the offensive line. Again, with the cadence, I mean, the coaching staff chalked it up to just they couldn't pinpoint it. To me, I'm going to chalk it up to just not being familiar enough with Gardner Minshew, and that's a whole nother story that we'll get into Minshew mania. But Driscoll played the entire offensive line, played all 55 snaps.
Right.
There was no Andre Dillard sighting. Driscoll was a mixed bag. Are you comfortable moving forward with that lineup? And we're going to assume, like Lane Johnson, I'm just going to assume anything he gives us is a bonus come playoff time. But they got to figure out a plan of attack going into the playoffs. If Lane Johnson can't go, is it certainly still Driscoll at right tackle, or will they experiment with Dillard? Will they move Mulata back at right? Will we see Dillard at left, or is this just the way it's going to go?
No, I think you leave it the way it is. I think Driscoll played a solid game. Not every pass rusher is going to be a Cam Jordan. So from that standpoint, the Saints had a really good defense. They have a really good defensive line, a really good front seven. So and he played solid. I think what you have to get, you want Jalen Hurts back, and then you want Shane Steichen to figure out what he wants to do. I think, from your point from Miles Sanders, he had 67 yards on the 12 carries, a nice average per touch. So from that standpoint, yeah, he's not getting worn down, but you have to figure out a good run pass ratio. Gardner, you could still run RPOs with him. He's a solid athlete, but you just can't go away from the totality of the offense, and the efficiency that got you there in the first place. And I think, with Minshew in, you tried to turn into this 30 to 45, passes per game team when it should be 45 rushes to 35 passes like the Saints did.
Yeah, they came out with the gunslinging mentality. I think 3 and outs to start the game.
Right.
The offense was basically the same minus the designed runs. Now, I was not a big believer that Gardner Minshew was this outstanding quarterback. I didn't see that in the Dallas game. The coaching staff told us that, though, and they just continued to roll with Minshew mania. It wasn't there from the gate. I did not see him. I thought he looked like a deer in headlights. Quite frankly, I saw very early on that Gardner Minshew was lacking confidence. Yet they kept going back to that well and trying to force the issue at hand. Is this a Nick Sirianni issue? Is this a Shane Steichen issue? Is it enough blame to go around for all? I mean, how do they get this thing corrected?
I mean, I think it's enough blame to go. I think you have to remember you have a quarterback, you have $100 million wide receiver, you have a top tight end. So from that standpoint, you still go out there thinking, I think as an offensive coordinator, like, hey, all he has to do is make timely throws, make good decisions, and they'll do the rest. But you have to put him in position to make those throws. So you can't come out, like you said, just slinging the ball around the field. You don't establish the running game. You don't allow Driscoll and other guys to get confident in the running game. And so at that point, you're on the field for 5 minutes in the first half. So no one's happy. So I think the recipe would be to come out, establish the running game, establish downhill. Then at that point, you get play action and other things going. You can make A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert happy without going away from the efficiency and the totality of your offense.
Yeah, it made no sense to me just in terms of how they attacked the Saints, who, you know, I don't think people gave the Saints enough credit. I hear people say the Saints team stunk. I tend to disagree. This is a team that came in there mathematically alive for the playoffs. The Eagles was the third win in a row, believe it or not. And I'll tell you what, they got a chance still to make the playoffs. And that was the other disappointing thing, is this would have helped solidify a top 10 pick, maybe even made it a top 5 pick. If the Saints do win this week, I mean, they could be in the playoffs. And then that Saints pick, the best I think it could possibly be, would be number 18th overall. So big difference there. They lost in more than one way. Now, you know, let's talk defensively. Again, I saw Dak Prescott carve up Jonathan Gannon's zone scheme 24 out of 24 2 weeks ago. 0 adjustments, 0 change to the defensive philosophy. Now, I get it, the second half got better, but again, to just have the audacity to do the same thing, you saw it was broke. You didn't fix it. I think Dalton started off like 13 out of 13, a lot of that against the zone coverage. I mean, I know I'm asking a redundant question, but it's just going to be this bend and don't break defense right into the playoffs, isn't it, Glenn?
I think until you get C.J. Gardner-Johnson back, you know, we've seen Avonte Maddox back. That helps some, but I think until Gardner-Johnson returns, he's not comfortable playing man-to-man. So he may be comfortable playing man-to-man with Slay and Bradbury on the outside, but he's not comfortable at all with putting his slot guys and his safeties in man-to-man coverage. So you're getting that soft bubble zone. They didn't give up a ton of points to the Saints. I understand it's not a high-profile offense. It's not a powerful offense, but you can see, I can understand your frustration, but fans have to understand what he's dealing with. And, you know, Josiah got he got that interception, but prior to the interception, he was also being targeted. So I think it's just a situation where you wait to get Maddox back, you wait to get Gardner-Johnson back, you wait to get your whole total defense back, and then you go from there. But I think it's clear he has no confidence in playing man-to-man with safeties and the guys in the slot one-on-one in the inside.
Yeah, and I know the chat room is saying the Saints have been eliminated. I don't know if they've been officially eliminated yet. We'll double check on that. I think they have a dim chance to make a wild card still, so we'll try to confirm that. Hey, talk to me about some of these injuries. We obviously, you know, with Damar Hamlin, this whole Josh Sweat injury kind of got thrown to the wayside. Now, I know Sirianni said he's kind of day-to-day, really not anticipating to see him anytime soon. Hopefully he's back for the playoffs. With that being said, let me know if you've heard anything update-wise on Josh Sweat, and how does this impact the team heading into the playoffs? If he is unavailable, is Robert Quinn looking like a candidate? Is Janarius Robinson looking like a candidate? I saw Brandon Graham played a season high, 51 snaps, 74% of the game. That was the most since 2020 that he's ever played in a game. Now, he had 34 reps against Washington, was his previous season high. 51 is a lot for BG. Now, he did produce and deliver, but I don't think that's the formula you want to use every week, especially in the playoffs with BG.
Well, I think, you know, the expectation is that Sweat will be day-to-day, so you hold him out. You do what you need to do to get the bye. He gets 2 weeks rest. So I think you continue to roll with Brandon Graham, and then you reassess things once you get your total defense back. But I think you'll see Janarius Robinson play before you see Robert Quinn play again. So, I mean, Sirianni, you know, they can say the right things about Quinn coming back, but I'm not sure you'll see him play again this season.
Yeah, I might tend to side with you there. All right, you mentioned Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I know he's ramped up a little, but he also still needs some rest.
Correct.
His 21-day window has yet to be activated, which tells me we're not going to see him against the Giants. Hopefully we have him back for the playoffs. And again, this impacts the secondary very significantly. And if you want to tie in Avonte Maddox, I don't have an update on him, but Josiah Scott played the majority of the snaps last week. I see Josiah Scott played 46 snaps, Kayvon Wallace only 6. I'm assuming that'll be, again, the recipe going into the playoffs if Maddox and Gardner are not available for that January 21st wild card or second round if the Eagles lock up the number 1 seed.
Correct. Well, you figure Marshawn Lattimore just returned for the Saints, and he had been out since October with the same injury. So I don't think we'll see Gardner Johnson again until the playoffs, and I think he'll be healthy at that point. As far as Maddox, it could be a turf toe, a sprained toe, so we're not sure. We'll monitor that. They haven't said anything. I think that's a situation where you'll see him take the next 2 or 3 weeks to rest as well. So I think it'll be a situation where you'll see them play that base defense, and that's where you get into the zone play because they're not playing a slot guy a lot. When the teams go to 2 or 3 wide receivers, they're just staying in the base defense. They're sliding the safety up, and they're playing zone. So I don't think you'll see them comfortably play man-to-man and do the things they were doing earlier in the season until you get till Maddox and Gardner Johnson return.
Sticking in the secondary, we're talking to Glenn Erby, Eagles Newswire, USA Today. I mean, Darius Slay has had really a poor second half. I don't know what's going on, if it's miscommunication, if it's player personnel, if it's maybe age starting to show. I have no idea. Can you pinpoint why Darius Slay has been in the middle of a lot of big plays given up?
Well, I think over the past few weeks, you've seen him travel. So I think he's the better of the 2 corners. So I think you'll see a situation where you've seen Gannon try to have him on the wide side. You try to have Bradbury on the tight coverage. So Slay's going to get balls thrown at him. The deep ball to T.Y. Hilton. Again, I talked about, I thought that was a situation where he was baiting Prescott and Josiah Scott didn't jump on the ball. But I think he'll be okay. I think once, again, that total crew returns, you have Gardner Johnson, you have guys that know what they're doing, that have that chemistry together. I think that balance in the secondary return. I think right now they're playing a lot of soft coverage, a lot of a bubble zone man coverage, a lot of schemes, a lot of the things they're doing on the go. So you won't know if it's man or zone until the receiver makes an out route or does a certain thing. So I think things will get back to the normalcy of the defense once Gardner Johnson and Maddox return. I know I sound like a broken record, but I think those 2 are really important. And I called it Maddox the most important defender a few weeks ago, but we can see now, even with Maddox back, Gardner Johnson may be the most important defender.
Yeah, and to somebody's point in the chat room, Josh Sweat also pretty big loss there. So the defense, let me ask you, gut instinct, out of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Avonte Maddox, Josh Sweat on the defensive side, how many guys do you think will be ready for the playoffs?
I think all 3. I think Sweat maybe could be in the concussion protocol or suffer the stinger, depending on how they evaluate it. But I think the other 2, with the next 2 weeks, you get that home field advantage. You give both a week of rest. I think you'll see all 3 back.
Okay. How confident are you with Jalen Hurts playing this week? I assume he's going to go. This game means too much. Initially, it was a 2-week injury to begin with anyway. We had Coach John D. Filippo on Friday. He had the same exact sprained 2 AC joint in his throwing shoulder. He said it definitely took a couple weeks to adjust, and it is a pain tolerance thing. Now, he mentioned, hey, we weren't 13-1 going for the playoffs, so he sat out the rest of the season. But he did say, like, after 2-3 weeks, if the team needed him to come back and play, he could have probably did it. I'm going to assume, like, Jalen Hurts, too much of a gamer, too much on the line to sit this one out. Am I overreading it?
No, you're correct. I mean, he looked good in practice last week. He had good velocity on his ball. I think it's a situation where you don't want your team losing 2 straight, but it kind of works out perfectly. We talked about the prior 2 weeks. You didn't really want him going close to a month and a half without playing. So I think it's a situation where you get him in there Sunday, you get him in there against a team that he's had success against. You get the win, and then you get that extra week for him to rest. So I think it works out both ways.
And so what is your gut instinct when he comes back? Is it going to be the same offense that it was? Are we going to see more of a Jalen Hurts relegated to the pocket passer type quarterback to kind of preserve the shoulder long term? Or what are you envisioning once Jalen Hurts does return to the offense? Will we see those designed runs? Will we see Jalen, tucking it and running it on those RPOs like we did prior to the injury?
No, I think the design runs to be out. I think you'll see a situation where, like you said, you want him to be comfortable in the pocket. You want him to make those timely throws. Now, if it's a third and short or something like that, of course, use your legs, do what's going to get you paid. But I think from a standpoint of preserving the shoulder, not having him take hard blows, you stay in the pocket. If you do run RPOs, you give the ball to Miles Sanders, Kenneth Gainwell, let your guys do what they need to do, get the win, get some rest.
Now that is concerning, though. If the designed runs are going to be out of the playbook, that makes the Eagles' offense very, I don't want to say one-dimensional, but as we saw with Gardner Minshew, less dimensional. And to me, like if the Eagles are going to have a shot here, Jalen Hurts running the ball is going to have to be a key ingredient. Otherwise, I mean, defenses are going to be able to account for that, no?
No, you're correct. I think his natural instincts as an athlete, as a runner, will take in. I think the situation where you don't necessarily want him, as we've seen, running 6 or 7 straight times. I don't think you want a situation where you have guards and tackles pulling and he's the designed ball carrier. Now it's a situation where he has a lane to run. He can get down, get those yards, yes, but you don't want him taking massive hits. But I think, again, it goes back to what we talked about earlier. You have the top ranked offensive line in football. You have the highest paid offensive line in football. Let them do what they do. So you don't have to take those hits. You have 3 running backs on the roster. They all split time. Let those guys absorb the carries that he would normally get while he does what he does.
All right, Glenn. What would you grade the performance? I'm going to ask you about the Giants, but from a 1 to 10 or A through F, to me, that was a D minus, borderline F performance. That was about as terrible as the Eagles played all year. You're going to put too much stock into that? You think this team bounces back this week against the Giants? Also, what is this? Attempt number 3 to clinch that number 1 seed. Do you think Big Blue? We remember the Joe Judge rant a couple seasons ago. Will Big Blue be playing their starters, do you think?
I think he'll play them some. I think it's a situation where they can't move up or down in the seating. So you don't want a guy like Saquon Barkley or your quarterback Daniel Jones suffering an injury. So from a standpoint of trying to win the game, depending on how the first 2 quarters go, if you're still in the game, maybe you keep them in. I think, Dayball's a competitor. I think if he sees the opportunity to prevent the Eagles from getting the number 1 spot, I think he'd go for it. But I think in terms of confidence and things of that nature, they've played 3 horrible games this year. And in those 3 horrible games, they still had an opportunity to win in the end. So I think we talked about it before. They have a good mixture of young guys with swagger, old veterans with swagger, Kelsey, Lane Johnson, all those guys. There's no confidence issue. The quarterback's coming back. The chemistry will be back. I think they get this done. They get the rest, and then we go from there.
We talked about the impact of that Bengals-Bills game. Like, I can't believe now there is an outside scenario where I think the Eagles could wind up number 2, but it looks like they're either going to win or tie and get the number 1 seed, or if they lose,
all the way to 5,
all the way down to 5, and basically queuing up a rematch
with the
against Tom
correct.
Brady and the Bucs, who rallied back against the Panthers last week. Let's play devil's advocate for a second. How much has this Eagles team grown? How much does the Jalen Hurts injury impact that matchup? And how do you kind of stack this version of the Eagles today versus the current state of the Tampa Bay Bucs? Obviously, the Bucs have lost a lot since last year as well.
I mean, it's a far better Eagles team. I think it's a scenario where if they had to go down there, get on the plane, I think they'd play well. I think they'd have a chance to win at the end of the game. But I think from a psychological standpoint, it would kind of be like backing into the playoffs. Even though they clinched a few weeks ago, you don't want to go from the number 1 seed, having the number 1 seed for most of the year, to a situation where you're now losing 3 straight, having to play on wild card weekend. So now you've lost 3 straight. You have a chance to lose 4 straight. And if you lose 4 straight, your season is over. So I think they need to get it done. Can they go to Tampa and win? Yes. You have AJ Brown. You have different scenarios going on. It's a much better team. Do you want to have to do that? No, because that means you've lost 3 straight and you've totally just collapsed.
All right, we shall see. How do you have the current? I kind of check in with the Glenn Erby power rankings, and we'll stick to the NFC. Too much to decipher through in the AFC with the current Damar Hamlin situation. I saw the 49ers now have the Ocean Casino Resorts odds down there in Atlantic City, have the 49ers favored now to win the NFC, then the Eagles, then the Cowboys. How does Glenn Erby see it?
I think at totality, how all three teams are playing right now, heading into the postseason, the Niners are the best team in the NFC. We can't take that away from them. I'd be sitting here looking like a liar. In terms of every team this year that we're talking about having that 2, 3, or 4 week spurt where they had injuries and they played badly and they had chemistry issues, I think you have to put that in account for the Eagles. So when you start talking about, well, when you get all the guys back, a total team, quarterbacks, right tackle, all of those things, the Eagles are the number 2 team behind the 49ers. But going into the playoffs, the Niners are the best team. They're the most efficient team. They're the most complete team for the last 5 or 6 weeks.
Yeah, and they're getting hot at the right time. And I think they've got the Cardinals this week and the Raiders next week. Like, it could not line up any better for the San Francisco 49ers. So we will see where the cookies crumble next week, Glenn. Tell the listening audience at home again, the website, the Twitter, the great content that you have coming out this week, where they can find you and all that fun stuff.
I appreciate you, Rick. Again, you can find me at theeagleswire.usatoday.com, on Twitter, Facebook, the Cover 2 NFL, the Cover 2 podcast coming soon. You know, the dam is not falling. Everything will be fine, Eagles fans. They'll get it together this week.
Hey, buckle up. I'm glad that you're bringing some confidence back to the fan base here. I think we need it.
It's a long season. It's a long season, Rick. It's 18 weeks of football. You're going to have 3 or 4 raggedy ones per se.
Yeah, and listen, the Eagles have really not faced a lot of adversity all year. It just happens to come later on in the season, much like 2017. So to be continued, it's unbelievable to think that we are here in week 18. It has finally arrived, Glenn. And hey, we'll do it again next week.
Appreciate you, Rick. You and Tone. Thank you guys again, man.
Yeah, Happy New Year's to you, by the way.
Same to you.
All right, there he is, and there he goes, Glenn Erby. And there I go. We all tinted out. You're see-through. We're going to take a quick break, get my shirt right, get my game tight, and buckle up and smash that like button. We'll be back right after this.